Gaurav Bhatti, a dancer choreographer, trained in Kathak under gurus Savita Sharma, Lata Bakalkar and Aditi Mangaldas. He's performed internationally with the Aditi Mangaldas Dance Company and interpreted works by Akash Odedra and Gauri Tiwakar. Gaurav's choreography merges classical Kathak with other dance forms and uses narrative structures familiar to contemporary dance audiences. He's currently apprenticing under Aditi Mangaldas and attending workshops led by Akram Khan and Mavin Koo. Hello, welcome to the Dance Centre podcast. I am your host, Claire French, and I'm joining you from the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, also known as Vancouver, Canada. I'll be talking to dancers, choreographers and other members of the dance world here on the West Coast to find out more about their creative work and practices and to discuss what it means to us to be dance professionals today. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, Gaurav. I'm so glad you could join me for this podcast.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much for having me here.
So good. And we're talking because you have a presentation coming up in Vancouver in March, co-presented with New Works and the Dance Centre.
That's right.
And we're really looking forward to that. But you've already just been here for the Push Festival. We are talking to each other in February, and you were here in January, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah, not that long ago. And you'll be here again so soon. So,
That's
yeah, lots of traveling for you, Gaurav. You are now I believe you're in Delhi right now. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, wonderful. And what are you doing there?
Well, currently I'm sort of based in India right now for a couple of months because some work related to the production is also happening here because my mentor, my guru, Aditi Mangalas, she lives as well in Delhi. And I partially work with the dance company as well, her dance company that she have. So I'm here based currently working on side by side for the same production that I'm going to premiere at the Dance Center in March. So I'm working on that and plus doing a lot of other shows as well that are other than the Bulleh Shah production. It's separate from that. So I work with a dance company. So we are based in New Delhi and then we travel all around the world. So I'm a repertoire dancer for the company. And yes.
So many things.
Yeah.
And of course, this is not only the life of a freelance dancer, but also the life of a dancer who is also a creator.
That's right.
And so, the balance and the scheduling of those things is always a bit of a feat and a challenge and also the excitement, right? It's actually,
correct.
Partially why we do things. I'd love to go back a little bit, well, quite far maybe, and talk a little bit about your dance history and I think your history and your lead into dance is very interesting. In my research, I discovered some wonderful interviews and snippets of information that are not in your bio directly, that you were a visual artist first and you were a Bollywood star.
That's right.
And that you were on a talent show with a dear friend of mine, Melanie.
Yes.
And I didn't even know that about Melanie.
Yeah.
But as I was researching you, I came across all of these interviews with Melanie and things as well. So there's a whole history there. None of that is in your bio, Gaurav. None of it. So I'd love for us to also talk a little bit about that because I think it's super exciting and it also shows there are so many layers to it, but it means that your dance history and how you found dance is also a beautiful, kind of journey of self-discovery, I think. So that's a lot for you to kind of suddenly say, and it feels like a list of things, but maybe a little bit of your dance history, how you came into dance, and then the kind of maybe the twists and turns that you've taken in there. Maybe that's a nice way to package it, however you like.
Yeah. So I was born in India and migrated to Canada in 2006 in Ottawa. And I did my high school and I did my university. I went to Ottawa U for visual arts and I did that BFA for 4 years. And so while I was in the university, we used to have a inter-university competitions, dance competitions where, not just Indian classical dance, but it was classical, hip hop, Punjabi folk, Bhangra, plus Bollywood. So I was always a Bollywood, like I used to dance Bollywood secretly, even in India. But because I belonged to a Punjabi family, and then we were used to live in a village, you don't see dancers around. And even if you saw dancers around, they're looked at in a very bad way, in a bad connotation altogether. So, as a child, I always kept it to myself. I never opened up about it. And I remember whenever my family or somebody was not at home, I would literally like close all the doors, all the curtains, and then, blast the music. And I used to dance as a child. So then I was moving to Canada, really, really, studying in high school. A lot of Bollywood dance used to happen, but as in like we used to have cultural shows every
Yeah.
year, and then I used to participate. Well, the first 2, 3 years I was shy about it, and then you meet people, you make friends, and then they push you to into it, and then just the openness of Canada, all the culturals together really, really helped me come together to. So that's where I used to do a tiny bit of Bollywood dance, and then university happened, and during university we used to do these competitions. From those competitions, I got exposed to all these different styles of dance. And but then during that time, I saw a performance of a Kathak. I mean, we had Bollywood, we had hip hop, we had other things, but I saw a group of like 6 to 8 Kathak dancer. And I mean, at that time, I wasn't sure about whether that's Kathak dance. And I asked, what is this dance style? And I was going to perform after them a Bollywood dance with a friend. And then they say, oh, this is Kathak. I said, this is beautiful. I really, really like it. It's really nice and interesting. And then they said, oh, this is the Madhuri Dixit. Madhuri Dixit is one of the famous Bollywood star and dancer in
Ah,
Bollywood. So I was always, and then that connected to the time I used to dance on her songs as a child.
beautiful.
It connected to that, that style of dance she used to do in even Bollywood. Even within Bollywood, she used to do Bollywood in a classical manner.
Hmm. So that's who you danced to in your home with the curtains closed and the doors closed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is the same style I resonated and
Mm,
after so many years.
mm,
And I mean, a sort of an idea that, but there was not much because the because there was this fear of saying that I want to dance was not an option also.
mhm.
And also people would make fun of me or other people, or there was no conversation, anybody taking dance as a career in the village, right?
Yeah, exactly. So not just your parents and not just your immediate family, but your entire village, like your
Yeah,
entire
exactly.
upbringing was like
Yeah.
against this in a way. Yeah.
And that's when and then obviously moving to Canada and opening up with friends in high school, and then doing secret. Still, my parents didn't know that I used to dance and stuff
No.
like that. Like, I would do like they knew that I did a lot of arts and arts and craft and paintings and sculptures and photography, things like that, but not dance.
Yeah. So you did your parents move with you?
Yeah,
Did they
yeah,
stay? Did they stay in India or did they come with you to
No, no,
Canada?
no, no. I migrated because of family. Yeah, my dad, he was there already, and he was already into the Canadian scene and culture
Okay.
and everything. Yeah,
Did that change things a little bit then? Do you think that opened a door?
sort of,
Yeah.
sort of. And I mean, he would have liked me to choose something that to do with medicine or
Yeah. Law
engineering, things like
and
that.
yeah.
There was
Yeah.
that conversation, and
Yeah.
there was a time I also even thought about doing medicine,
Hmm.
but then I don't know, something happened. I chose visual arts,
And
and
yeah, and then the dance kind of chose you in a way. I know.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that
So
dance shows me
yeah.
how, because when I met these girls and then they were dancing and I was so
Yeah.
interested in it, and then I became friends with them, and then then we used during these competitions, they're like, why don't you try it? And I used to pick up very fast the classical form. And then out of after all that, then they saw, and one of the girls, my friend, she took me to the guru, to where they used to learn. Then one day she took me, and then, and then the guru saw me, and then I was in my jeans and t-shirts, not like in the kurtas and the traditional wear, and then like, who is he? And she said, oh, no, 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 he's good. He picks up very fast, my friend said to the guru. And then she said, okay, fine, come join the class. And joined with people who've been learning for 8 years, 10 years, 12 years in that class. And then in my jeans and t-shirt, I just went for it,
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then she saw it, and at the end she said, you can come to class, next class. And then,
Excellent.
and then she helped me also explore the other styles of Indian classical dance, Bharatnatyam. Odissi was in her school, and then even Uday Shankar, which is sort of contemporary Indian dance inspired by all these art forms, classical art forms. And then out of which I chose Kathak. And then that's how I started learning secretly. My parents still didn't know that I was, doing dance training while I was going to university at Ottawa U. And that's how my journey started. And then dance sort of, regardless of all these things over so many years, I feel dance sort of found me. Let's say
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I feel like there are questions, aren't there, still that you're asking about dance and the form and the fusion of styles and your relationship to it, which actually draws you to creating,
Yeah.
your own works and performing solo as well as performing with the
Yeah.
groups. So I wonder if we can just move a little bit into that, because I also know you had a group, Janat or Yanat was
Jannat
Janat.
Performing Arts, correct.
Yeah, which I also know from the interview that I watched means heaven. But there was a whole time there where it seemed like you were setting up a performance group, which seems quite a public thing to do.
Correct.
There's the simple kind of individual practice of finding time to go into a studio alone, and
Yeah.
then forming a company and everything becomes quite a bit more public, depending on how well people know it. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that journey of finding your people, growing those things, and then your solo creation a little bit. I know it's all interwoven for you still.
No, no issues. This Jannat Performing Arts was basically, so all the friends and colleagues and dance family that was created during the process of university
Mm-hmm.
competitions. Some of them were against each other, but out of which four of us were so passionate about dance. Also, it was about, there was a lot of negativity as well during these competitions. So we wanted to create a sort of a dance school, a dance space for people who either, whether from South Asian community or any sort of community, who were interested, because we were four founders were together. One was Punjabi, two Bangladeshi, one who was a hip hop dancer, and then I was Punjabi, who was a Bollywood person. Then so we sort of created this a space for Jannat, means heaven, also because we wanted to create a safe space. We wanted to create a place where creatively everybody sort of comes together, all the forms come together. So that is why we started that. And then we were all in the same city. And then eventually, one by one, we all, life happened, everybody moved away, and only one stayed, and that was Karina Karmakar, and she lives in Ottawa, and she runs that company still.
Oh.
And then the Bollywood star happened at the same time. So there's certain things, life happened. So I did that, and then from that took me to Bombay, yeah, where Melanie I met. And after doing that whole process, that really ignited some sort of, not just the competitiveness, but also the that realization of that this is something I want. This is something, like, in terms of choreography, in terms of acting, in terms of just the life in Bombay. So that's why I left Jannat and move forward with my dance and learn and keep learning Indian classical dance in Bombay. So similar thing happened there also. I was doing some dance show, somebody saw me and I became friends with them. She took me to her guru and the journey started from there as well. Then the classical world started opening for me.
Yeah.
And before that, I even did a workshop where a dance of basically Kathak god was Birju Maharaj Ji, who passed away recently. He was like the legend. And while I was in with my first guru, Savita Sharma in Ottawa, she's the one who told me I should go, do a workshop which is happening in UK, Liverpool. So I went there, I met him, but I was not put in his workshop. I was put in another guru's workshop, which was my current guru, Aditi Mangaldas.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about her. I'm like, why are they putting me this? I want to go with Virju Maharaji because that's the famous name. And I did not know that Aditi Mangaldas was so amazing. So her creativity and everything, that how I am now in terms of my creation in dance and everything, it was now, who would have thought? I didn't know about her, and then I fell in love with her the first 5 minutes of the workshop. And that's how I connected. And then when I was in Bombay and there were auditions happening for the dance company, for Aditi Mangalaska dance company, and I auditioned for that and I got in. They were looking for a specific part for a specific production. But once I started the whole process with working with them, everything was going on over top of my head. Like nothing I could get. Like being in a class, in a classical class and doing a very basic, the structure of the class is doing compositions and everything in a structured manner is one thing. Or when you're doing a creative company, you're using these tools to create something completely something else. It was just, and on top of it, the speed was so high and everything. And then I gave up. I literally gave up. And I went and talked to her. I said, look, I'm not able to do it. And I think it's not fair to you, obviously, to take someone else's space, and not fair to you because you probably feel bad. So I don't think I should continue, but I want to do it, but I will come back. So then I went back to Bombay. Then I trained for 8 to 9 months. There were auditions happening again for the same part. But this time I was not solo. This time I was against 55 to 60 really, really good Kathak dancers in Delhi. But I still got in, which was great. So that's how my journey started, like, from here to there to there. And then with the company, I've been 7.5, 8 years over the time I've been in Delhi since 2017. And yeah, I've been traveling with the world. And then they have Kathak as they're the Kathak company, the classical company, but they do a lot of work based on Kathak. So we use the tools of Kathak to create contemporary work in the sensibilities.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes from me also now, because
Yeah.
I've worked with it and I started learning from her. I was lucky enough that whenever she was free, she was teaching.
Yeah, I love the trajectory of the dancing by yourself to competition to finalist in a massive competition, which led you back to the formal, and the struggle that you had between the class structure and the creative kind of, and that you recognized that and then went back for more training and came back again with that experience, knowing how you needed to train, what you needed to work on, and as well as where you needed to go to work on that, to come back. I mean, it's a wonderful kind of like, it's a wonderful kind of piece of advice without being advice, in a sense. Like, your experience is kind of the self-awareness and the confidence actually to walk away from something and even speak up that you're not ready, walk away from it to come back and actually go and do the work that you needed to do to come back, knowing that opportunity might be gone.
Yeah, and that opportunity to be in that dance company,
Yeah.
especially classical dancers all around the world, they really, really would do anything to be in there,
Yeah.
and they would like anything. And I remember it's like the only company that Indian classical company that creates work that it's at a certain international level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it because you say you'd do anything to be in that company, and what you did was you left the company
Yeah.
to be in, to be to be where you needed to be in the company. You left that company, went to do the work, and came back.
People called me crazy, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I call it the kind of arrogance of youth. I think there is this element to that, right? Where you know in your heart why, and no matter how, and I can say that now kind of looking back on mine, but there are decisions I made and things I said to people like, oh no, I'll always be in dance. I didn't say I'll always be a dancer every single day, 8 hours a day in a company. That's not what I said. I will always be in dance. And they would laugh at me because they would both connect to me saying that, they would understand that that was passion and enthusiasm. And they would be like, just like you said, life happens. You
Yeah.
can't know. And I knew at that age, I knew that I was always going to be. And of course, things happen, but I still say it. I will always, because I'm still that same person.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I have that I know is me and my life. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I'd love to move just a little bit maybe into the fusion of styles, maybe, because I think, and I could be wrong here, but I think your work is maybe a little bit more fusion than some of the companies you work for. And I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that with your background and your own solo creations, while I think they are rooted in tradition and you have things to say about your culture and it's a very important thing for you to be working with and messaging with your work, because you have such an array of styles, behind you in your own life, would you say that your work itself is a little bit more fusion than some of the companies, or maybe how it might be different?
See, fusion is when for me at least, fusion is sort of, you have a classical form and it's done in a certain way, for example, right? So to say it's fusion, to break a point, certain barriers, if a structure is, you always seen a structure done in a certain way, and then somebody just changes the structure to say certain narrative or certain to make a point. So does that makes any less classical, for example? Where are you doing pretty much all the same things? You're using the dance compositions, you're using the footwork, you're using movements. Everything is pretty much Kathak, right? For example, but you dismantle certain things, or your outlook on it. Like for example, like if I was closed in one room, how do you show it? Or I was stuck in a net, how do you show it? Or if you there basically I go out of my classical form when the classical form is, I'm not able to say everything within that form.
Beautiful.
But when I say I take something from outside, it's the sensibilities. Like my guru, she says, we are classical dancer. Our bodies are trained as classical dancers. Everything about us is classical, right? So everything, because the body, so it's like, she says, this analogy she has. She's like, you sow a seed of classical and then you water it with contemporary sensibilities. What comes out of it is the fruits of that. So you're not like having a seed and the water separate. It's what has become. You've grown. There's a process work to it. So it's not, I wouldn't call it fusion. It's contemporary work based on classical.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I only take things, for example, colori, certain movement. Also, my guru is quite rebellious. For example, there was a whole thing happened about, you know, sh- not wearing a scarf
Mm-hmm.
doesn't give you three dimensionality.
Not
So there
wearing a
was a
scarf doesn't give you. I
yeah,
see. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So there was a whole debate about it within the classical world because she didn't wear an Indian dupatta scarf, for
Uh,
example.
mm-hmm. Is this
So she,
Savita or is this Aditi?
no, this is Aditi Mangalas.
Aditi. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she said, three dimensionality doesn't come from a piece of cloth. Three dimensionality for in a dancer comes in your spine. So to say that classical dancers saying, not all of them, but some of them saying that they don't use their spine in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, so to say that she's now wearing a piece of scarf, she's not classical, and to say that there is no use of spine, so that is also not classical. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in ballet, if you look at it, how much work of spine
Absolutely.
happens,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
are you telling me that they're not classical dancers? So is all these debates, so it's different. So I would say in my production, Bulleh Shah, The Seeker of Light, it has evolved tremendously. Like for many years, I've been working on it, on and off, on and off. Also because my training was going side by side as well. I
Mm-hmm.
was working side by side as well. I would work on it. It was different. How I look at it now and how I started is completely huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a fusion if you if you're asking me.
Yeah.
It's well, this particular production is not, it has the components of, different styles, but they're incorporated into the style of Kathak dance because
Yeah.
body is that.
Yeah.
No matter
Absolutely.
what I do, what it's just body some because because of the training, because it grows through your feet. The Indian classical dance, especially Kathak, it grows through your feet and it goes to through your
Mm-hmm.
body and then it's till the tip of your head.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what I do, eventually will because the body is Kathak, it'll be still classical to me at least.
Yeah. I think that's so articulate, Gaurav, and I think what I also appreciate about it is you are contemporary, you are of our time, and so there's an element of your journey and your discovery of Kathak and its place in your life, and like today, also being at work, like, and as you say, as you do more, as you work with different people, that's going to come into your body, and that's going
That's
to
right.
be, and I love that the title, is it Bulleh Shah, um,
Bullish.
is also seeker of light, and this I love this idea that to seek light, you constantly have to be, well, there's an expectation
Yeah,
that you have to continue to seek because light isn't
yeah.
ever going to be the same. There are shadows, all sorts of things, but in that moment, that seeking something is like, I think you're also, it's like nurturing and observing the growing of the seed as well, isn't it? It's like there's the
Yeah,
watering
yeah,
of the seed and then there's the observation or the listening to the evolution, listening to its growth, paying attention to or attending to. So what I really like about what you said there is that, and this comes up for me in my contemporary life as well, contemporary dance life and my own choreographic work, is how much an audience understands or needs to understand, or whether it's an individual journey for the creator in terms of what sources of material they're drawing on and what training they're drawing on of their own. So that I love that what you articulated there for the listeners as well as just me, but for everybody who's listening to this podcast, is this idea that the Kathak is the body that this will be presented in, and that you are like respecting as you're on this journey, or honoring as you're on this journey. So if an audience doesn't understand how contemporary it is in terms of where you're drawing from, it doesn't matter because they're receiving the information you want them to receive. They're receiving information about Kathak dance. They're watching you as a Kathak dancer, And then they're also hopefully resonating with the contemporary messages that you're putting inside there. So I just think that's a beautiful way of setting up your solo creation so that they're not going to see Bollywood. In your solo, they're not going to see, it's not Bollywood dance. You're not going to break out into, like 32 counts of Bollywood in the middle of this piece and come back. Yeah. So I think that's a really beautiful way of you explaining that. In the company work that you do, and I know you work in the UK and in India, or you have worked in the UK with, I'm not sure if I'll get the name of the company right. Is it Akash Odedra?
That's right.
Yeah.
Akash Odedra, yeah.
Based in Leicester. That's where their home is, but I know that they do massive, large-scale performances.
That's right.
At Sadler's Wells included, lots of famous large-scale theatres. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about those different journeys, like being involved. You suggested by being in a group and in being in a company, was back then when you first started was a little bit of a shock for you, but you're still balancing the solo creation, the training still with your gurus, and then being in these large scale performances. And I know that there are, in some ways, they have contemporary takes or because they're contemporary productions. They're happening now. They're collaborators, maybe even back to your visual art in a little way, with the set design and the lighting design and all of these conceptual things that they're dealing with in these shows. And then also you say you're doing workshops with Akram Khan and Mavin Koo, yeah. And that in itself as well has large scale contemporary theatrical, but very grounded in, Indian classical dance and Kathak, of course.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about your experiences maybe with those and your roles maybe in those, with those artists?
With Akram Khan and Mavin Koo, sir, I interacted with them solely on the basis of so they had a Indian classical intensive workshop. It was like a sort of a week-long residency workshop where they were teaching. Then they had gurus from India teaching us, plus Akram sir was teaching us about some parts from his own production, how he works and how he thinks. His musicians were there. So that opportunity really, for someone like me who wants to, do classical work or contemporary work based on Kathak, there's a direct reference, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just to see it. Yeah. Also, but obviously to learn it and just surrender yourself to see how they create, what they see, and what's their process work like. Mm-hmm. So, and it was just beautiful because what I've learned, well, one, to surrender yourself completely. Second thing was their ability to create movements that are so universal. So they're able to connect completely to everyone and anyone in the audience. From these large, intricate productions, yet they are able to connect with so many people in a much simplistic way, I would say. So that was my experience with them. Then Akash is a dear friend as well, and he worked with Aditi Mangaldas, my guru. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so he's done a lot of people's choreography, and so he's one of the choreographies done by Aditi Mangaldas. So she choreographed it, and it's a piece called Echoes.
Oh yes, I saw the trailer.
So it's like a classical piece, but how she choreographs it, the structure is very different from the whatever traditional quote unquote you could say it, the traditional Kathak dance. It's very different. It's all the broken. It's like she weaves everything together how she sees it, the piece. She was working on a production, and she asked me to be a rehearsal director for her. And that was an amazing opportunity for me to learn so much and sort of also be the second body for it as well. Akash and Aditi Didi, they were doing a duet together. Mm-hmm. So that's how I met him. And then we were working on a production with those two. And then plus Aditi Didi was doing her solo project. So I was the rehearsal director for both. So that's how I interacted.
Wonderful.
Yeah, for both the productions. And it was great because both productions were contemporary based work. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of Kathak, but Akash is, very wide range of vocabulary he has as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's how I met Akash, and then I working with them from the beginning, from research to exploration to residencies to putting a production together after 2.5 years of working on it each. So learned the whole process work and how, and I was becoming as their second bodies. I would dance as Akash sometime, I would dance as Aditi Didi as well.
Oh,
So I
wonderful.
was
Yeah.
do that. And even her solo Forbidden that I worked on, which
Mm.
was, but we were doing the residency with, because she had collaborators from UK. So, her work is also international. So Akash, we traveled back and forth between UK and India,
Hmm.
and we had a residency in India, we had a residency in UK, and then so I was basically hopping from one place to the other.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah,
It's a long hop, more like a
yeah,
leap.
it somehow worked out.
Yeah, it's good. It's amazing. So we'll kind of bring this back maybe to your solo that will be presented here in March and talk a little bit about collaboration. We're already going into that a little bit with the large scale productions, and we talked about music and lighting and those people in residencies in different places. You say you're working on some of it while you're in India as well, but also just as a lead into that, I am wondering whether your background in visual arts comes in when you're thinking about your own creations, and also maybe helps speaking to collaborators, or maybe hinders how you speak to collaborators, who knows. But there's an element of your understanding and your interest in other art forms that also comes in, which I think is a beautiful thing. I think that's
yeah.
just such a wonderful kind of place of inspiration and source material that you can draw on, but also it's a way of speaking, a way of articulating work that can sometimes be a bit different. So could you talk a little bit about maybe your collaborators and collaboration, what that means to you and those
Yes.
things?
So the light designer, his name is Ryan Strafford. He's from the UK, and we were working on Aditi Didi's production, Forbidden. So that's where I met him, and he's young, new ideas, and very creative. Also, visually, I think he has quite a lot of interest, just like me, in visual arts.
Mm-hmm.
So then I have a costume designer. He's from Canada, only Toronto. But his background is from Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
He's done my costumes in the past, my dance costumes. Also, the reason why him was also because in the narrative of my piece, Bulleh Shah and Punjab is from both sides of India and Pakistan. Also, there, the Persian language, the Urdu language. So there's a lot of mix up over the centuries, and his history that he brings on the table was also equally important. It was also about bringing the worlds together, which we already are together
Mm-hmm.
for us, but in relation to in through the costume design and ideas, the symmetry sort of thing. Both of us from two different countries living in Canada
Yeah.
in the same city, somehow met, connected, never felt any different. The bond is so strong, and then and now through fabric and through designs and through all these things, it's like this, we sort of came together
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
to work
it's
on this
amazing.
project. So it's like it's beautiful how no matter what, where everybody is, what has happened in the past, everything is all interconnected.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sewn into the fabric.
Yeah, that's right. And then I think it's everything is tying down, and even certain designs that will be on the costume. It's called the jali work, and jali work is like it's like a net work,
Mm.
and which is specifically done in chicken curry, and then that I'm using it to in a reference to a window and a path and a window and a doorway between two worlds,
Mm-hmm.
whether heaven and earth, whether from one country to other, whether your heart to my heart,
Mm-hmm.
and a light that passes through
Mm-hmm.
into a dark room.
Mm-hmm.
illuminating, whether you're watering it with water, a seed. So
Mm-hmm.
bringing life between these two, and then whatever is keeping us in between,
Mm-hmm.
breaking those barriers. So that is what it is all about, the costume.
Mm-hmm.
And so we extensively think about it, why we do what we do, why we choose the particular design, and why those specifically, and how they are related
Mm-hmm.
to our history.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a dialogue, isn't it? It's a dialogue with the history
Yeah, yeah,
and new questions that come up. Like as
correct,
as a contemporary artist, new questions
correct.
that come up. This is wonderful. Alongside your solo and alongside the things you're working on in Delhi right now, what's next for you, do you think? So we know what's now. Do you know what's next? Or
What's next?
even if it's just dreams, or where do you see, or is it can be more of the same, because of course you're in a very creative environment, so there may be more productions and more solo creations, but it's really more around maybe themes, or maybe like where in the world you maybe are going next, or is this and how you feel about the patterns that are already in your life, like the travel and of those things. Like where are you at? What do you hope for?
I
You know.
Tough question.
Maybe it's just dinner. Maybe.
No, the thing is, it's also very relevant to my life, this question, because when you ask me, even though I'm a Canadian citizen, I live in Canada, but I live other places, but I keep traveling for work. Also, the nature of work is such that I need to travel and keep doing multiple things. And I also love traveling the world and meeting new people, working with new people. And there's so much more to life than, for me at least, to being in one place and just want to learn from. There's beauty to it, but it's not something that right now I want to be tied down. So I
No.
see myself, in the next at least 10 years doing minimum 10 to 15 years of doing extensive solo work productions. But side by side, I'm also thinking of doing. I love working with bodies, lots of bodies. If I can afford and I can get a grant,
Yeah.
and why not? I have a piece called Dashavtar. Dashavtar is basically 10 incarnation of Vishnu, one of Hindu's
Mm.
god. And but I want to create a larger. I've already done a sort of a choreography with 10 people here in India, which was a commission by Drishtikon Dance Foundation, Aditi Mangala's dance company. But I want to take it further. It turned out to be good, actually. So
Actually, surprise. You're
I
surprised.
was surprised. I wasn't sure it was gonna happen, how it was gonna be perceived, but it turned out to be good. And I always, even in Jannat, the dance competition, I always work with 20, 30, 40 dancers.
Yeah.
I'm I am just people's, like, I can see without seeing bodies and how they're moving and how they inter. So I want to do a choreographic work, like Crystal Pite's work is amazing, how the bodies are working. Even Akram sir, a lot of Siddhi Labri
Yeah.
as well.
Chakri.
So
Yeah.
there's so much body work that I would like to, it's on my future plans
Mm-hmm.
to work on group piece very
Mm-hmm.
soon. But the starting point for a group choreography would be on the Shabdar.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is also, it's about birth and death, and birth and death. The
Cycles.
reborn. It's a cycle of life. It's sort of, that's the peg point, basically. That's the starting point. Obviously, the incarnation of the god Vishnu is one thing, but what is I'm very much interested to go deeper in it, what actually means
Mm-hmm.
in terms of now and day and age.
Yeah.
And I want to, in my solo work, I want to travel the world, and I think the world is in really, 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 sometime in a sad space, and the light is very, very, very necessary right now.
Mm-hmm.
That is why I want to travel and share that light, the share whatever I can,
Yeah.
in my way, and
Yeah.
whether it's the beauty of the dance, whether it's beauty of the music, whether it's the set, whether it's meeting people only after dancing.
Hmm.
So because I know when I'm dancing, and then certain parts are very, very heavy on me as well, because there is, other than the beauty, there is also darker side of the production as well.
Always. Yeah.
You have to step on stage. So I want to be able to do that.
That's the beautiful thing about, well, both the title Seeker of Light and then this desire you have to work with lots of bodies. I always find that's something that's dear to my heart too, and both the extremes of like larger groups of people and the solo creation, which I'm working on for myself, but I've done a lot of group choreographies, and there's something about the negative space as well as the active space that is always fuels me. Like I'm as interested in the absence of the body as I am in the presence of the body, and I think that's also kind of what you're talking about there is like the dark and the light, the active and the passive, all of these beautiful ways that continues to evolve and emerge and change, is like a very, very exciting. I think it's that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Gaurav. This has been really wonderful, and I really look forward to seeing your show in March. I hope everything goes well for you there in New Delhi in India, and look forward to you coming back. Are you coming back to Vancouver first, or so are you based now in Vancouver when you're in Canada? Or are you still based elsewhere in Canada?
Well, as of now, when I come back to Canada, I'm always in Vancouver.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate. And thank you for having me here. And we don't get to share much and speak more about life and dance and in relevance and in the connections, which is good. As I was speaking, there was many things were arising in terms of the choreography and is bringing back to what the piece is all about, and
it's good to be reminded of we're not, once it gets to a certain stage, it's not just about producing it. The value in having it seen and sharing it and continuing to work on it is rooted in all of these things that we've just talked about. It's a little bit of our sustenance, right? To go back and remind ourselves. Yeah.
That's right.
So wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, as this will help other listeners find us and help us to grow our dance audience. We'll be back next month. In the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook at The Dance Centre, Twitter at Dance Centre, and Instagram at The Dance Centre BC. And if you'd like to support our work, please consider making a donation. Just go to our website at thedancecentre.ca, where you'll find extensive information about our upcoming programs and events. The music for the Dance Centre podcast was composed by James B. Maxwell. Always a pleasure to connect with you through dance. Until next time.